Alex and Ron. Actually, I get just 3 o'clock.
No, that's the idea.
Stone, can we start at 3?
Channel 18 is good to go.
Okay, thank you. Before I open up the hearing for the Barnstable Conservation Commission, I would like to ask George to do a roll call for the quorum purpose.
Abadili,
Present.
Foster,
Present.
Gilmore present, Hearn,
Present.
Lee,
Present.
Moran,
Present.
and Sampu is absent today. Administrator Darcy Carley,
Present.
Staff Member Kim Kavanaugh,
Present.
and Agent Ed Hoops.
Present.
We have a quorum and the floor is yours, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Acting under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and or Chapter 237 of the Code of Town of Barnstable, the Barnstable Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, May the 2nd, 2023 at 3 p.m. on the applications of John V. Hurley, Town of Barnstable, Robert C. Howler, Trustee, Cape Cod Property Trust. The hearing will be held remotely as televised on Channel 18. Then plans and application are on file and may be reviewed by scheduling appointment by sending email request to Darcy Curley at 230 South Street, Hyannis. This meeting is being recorded and transmitted by the Information Technology Department of the Town of Barnstable on Channel 18. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20, anyone else desiring to make such a recording or transmissions, please let Channel 18 or I know. Hearing none. This afternoon's hearing agenda is posted on the town's website. On the agenda, next to each application is the amount owed to the Town of Barnstable for the cost of advertisements. Please send your checks to Conservation Divisions at 230 South Street before the hearing. Remote participations. The Conservation Commission's public hearing will be held by remote participation as a result of an act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency cited by the governor on March 29, 2023, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. Remote public access to the hearing shall be provided in the following manner. 1, the hearing will be televised via Channel 18. Second, the real-time public comment can be addressed to the Conservation Commission utilizing the Zoom link 879-8456-8814 or use the toll-free phone number 888-475-4499 as shown on the agenda. Third, the public can also email their comments to darcy.curley@town.barnstable.ma.us at least 8 hours prior to the hearing. For your information, Commissioner Sampu is not available for tonight, so he will provide a comment. Well, actually, for under the old new business, the first item is the commission vote on the remote or in-person hearing. With Commissioner Sampu not available for this hearing, and he will be available for next Tuesday, May 9th, I will postpone the vote until next Tuesday, May 9th, for the remote or the in-person hearing decision. The second item under the old new business is Indian Pond Association petition regarding guidelines for private freshwater docks. Bush? Oh, sorry. Before I do that, I'll have to recognize Bill first.
Yeah, as a board member of the Indian Pond Association and as a signer of the petition, which we have all received, I find it necessary to recuse myself from this hearing. However, I am highly sympathetic to what they might be saying. And with that,
excuse me, Bill.
Yeah.
Since this is not going for a formal vote, I think. I mean, a vote on anything. Wouldn't it be proper for Bill to still participate, Tom? having announced his, what he's already done, but wouldn't it? I certainly don't think he has to leave the room.
I agree, John. I think that
Thank you, Larry. Yeah.
I think it's appropriate for him to be able to participate.
Yeah. If this was coming up for a regulatory vote, Bill, I think that would be different. But I'm happy legally for you to stay unless somebody else has an objection.
The only thing though, after these petitions, we have to decide whether we want to take on this petition or not, right? That would be a vote, correct?
Not necessarily. I don't think we have to decide right now. I think there's a lot to discuss first.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe not.
But all I'm saying is just to lay out the groundwork. If we decide to take on these petitions, there would be more time for discussions because we have to advertise for these workshops, whatever the stuff is, to lay out what is the rule for this, freshwater dock guideline stuff, whether it's going to be, whether there's any change to it or not. There would be much more timeline because right now we are only hearing these petitions and we have to make a decision whether we want to take this on or not. Right. That's my take.
Yeah. Whatever you're most comfortable with, Thomas. I mean, whatever you think. Bill, whatever you're most comfortable with too.
Well, I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want anyone saying I have some conflict of interest. So, I mean, I thought it might make sense for me to disappear. I'm torn. I don't know what. Thank you, John, for your.
But Bill, you're so upfront about it. I mean, you are, and I think that what you're saying is that while you have a bias or preference or interest, I look at it that you can contribute to the discussion, and you don't have to. That's how I look at it, and I think that the more input we get, the better we're in a position to identify all the issues and iron them out. That's how I look at it.
But if it comes to a formal vote, I would agree with it. If it comes to a formal vote, Bill, you'd have to recuse yourself at that point.
Well, okay.
Listen,
Tom, are you okay with me staying on? I won't vote, but the question.
You can stay on and then raise a question, whatever. And then if we have to go and take a vote, whether to move on or whatnot, then you can recuse yourself on the vote.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Butch, welcome.
Well, thank you very much. So I'm currently president of the Indian Pond Association, and both Chairman Lee and Vice Chairman Foster, as well as the fellow commissioners, I really appreciate you giving us the opportunity to present this and to hear our discussions. As you saw, we have 116 petitioners, and we had an additional 74 supporters who supported this, but were reluctant because of privacy issues to actually sign the petition. So the petition was really driven out of two overriding concerns. The first is that we recognize that one of the most important characteristics of our three ponds is their natural beauty and serenity. So for 6 months out of the year, the shoreline is uninterrupted with permanent docks. The existing permanent docks that are currently there are very small and very unobtrusive. And it was evident from the deliberations for the proposed permanent dock at 24 Flume Avenue that there is currently no way to ensure that this characteristic is preserved, and as those are simply guidelines and are not mandatory requirement. So while we understand that some of the ponds in Barnstable, where they're more densely populated, there may be some opposition to having such a permanent regulation. But for our three ponds, it's quite clear from the petition that a majority of the residents around the pond were in favor of this requirement. And so that's why we asked that this permanent regulation only apply to the three Indian ponds. If there are other ponds similarly situated, they could simply be added to the list, and you could have it essentially both ways. The second issue was there does not seem to be a clear definition of what constitutes a seasonal dock. So therefore, we're proposing that you codify a definition that makes it clear that substructures from a seasonal dock cannot permanently be installed, as was approved for the dock for 24 Flume Avenue. There's no physical justification for such structures. We have no tides. The lakes are small. They don't have big winds. And such structures, when they're left in the water, they present a clear and potentially fatal danger to swimmers, kayakers, stand-up paddleboarders, and even fishermen. And the ponds are used by those groups all year round, particularly now that we're not seeing ice over the ponds in the wintertime. So a large portion of the residents around these three ponds want these changes. And so we're here to ask, it appears to be a simple process, requires a vote from this body to get it enacted. So what do we have to do next to make this happen and to effectuate the will of the large portion of the residents around these three ponds?
Thank you, Bush. Like I mentioned before, when we just started, is like, I think, if we consider this petition, if we are going to consider these petitions, we need to advertise for public comment and all those stuff. So there is a lot more other things to come along in terms of the workshop and stuff like that before we can take a vote. That's how I'm seeing it, process-wise.
Mm-hmm.
Questions from the commissioners to Bush? Or do you have any member that from your side want to speak? Larry? Unmute yourself, Larry.
Yes. Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to follow up with Butch. First of all, I'm Burton Rue legally as a resident. That's the name I go under. Larry's my nickname. I own 2 lots on Middle Pond. I own 365 Hollage Hill Lane and 370 Hollage Hill Lane. And I'm also a member of the IPA. I've gone through the process of having a dock approved for myself personally, as well as in a butter twice. I had a butters on both of my lots that I've gone through the process before. As Butch alluded, the reason we're here today is the purpose of improving the consistency, the regulation and enforcement of private docks and piers on our freshwater ponds and lakes. We want to keep our ponds and shorelines clean, safe, and beautiful. And the current 703 regulations, when you read them, it was quite obvious. In fact, they haven't been revised since 2006. There's been a couple of amendments added about dredging, but other than that, they've been in place for 17 years. And the content of those regulations clearly apply right now to saltwater docks. And in the preamble on the 703.1, it states that the regulations will not apply, that these regulations do not apply to freshwater docks unless the commission specifically finds that they're applicable. And that really, in essence, diminishes the 703 regulations to a set of guidelines and up to whatever you, the commission, should decide. That leaves a lot of room for both the applicant and abutters to really don't know. They have a lot of freedom in what they can come back to you with. As an abutter, I don't know what I'm going to see and be protected by, because it's left so open in that the commission can basically decide what it wants to do on a case-by-case basis. When you combine this with section 703.5C, which says these regulations notwithstanding, the Conservation Commission will consider any and all peer proposals on a site-specific basis. So the whole thing is pretty open. As a freshwater boater, recreational user, it's really not clear specifically what you're going to get when you apply for or abut a freshwater dock. So with that in mind, I will speak specifically as an abutter. I don't know, unless I go and I get the notification by law, which I do, I don't know what the length of the dock will be approved as, because many times it says that it will be no more than half the frontage of the lot. And both docks that I happened to abut did not go with that as well. Seasonally, I will say that these are all listed as seasonal docks, but unless you issue that in the order of conditions that one can see, you don't know if that in fact became a requirement for the user or not, and so forth and so on. I don't want to take up your time on that, but I do believe that all of the definitions and regulations that are defined can almost equally be applied both saltwater and freshwater today. And for example, I do believe that freshwater docks should be seasonal. All docks should rest on pads on the bottom or wheels if they're a wheel in and wheel out dock, so forth and so on. All of the things that we just talked about. So I'm just further, I guess, reinforcing what has been asked for in the petition, requesting that the Conservation Commission clarify, modify, append the regulations so that it applies to freshwater docks.
Thank you, Larry. Question from the commissioners to Bush or Larry?
Larry Moran has his hand up, Tom.
Unmute,
Yes, Larry's hands.
unmute
Larry?
yourself, Larry.
I'm sorry.
No, the other
No,
Larry,
the other
Larry
Larry,
Moore,
oh,
you're
you.
muted. There you go.
This is Larry Moran, the commissioner Moran. We cannot hear you, Larry.
There you go. Came unplugged.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Briefly,
Can you hear me now?
yeah.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Larry Rue, thank you for your comments, and thank you, Butch, as well. My interest in this property has been varied. I was not in favor of the prior hearings on some of this, but that's irrelevant at this point. I think the thing that I look at is that I too have wondered why this has lingered as guidelines for so long, but that doesn't mean it can just easily slide into a regulation. I looked at the letter that you wrote. I'm glad it was only a page long, because otherwise there'd be many more points to cover. I look at the first thing that hits me, and I think it hits more than just me, is that this would be a singling out of the Indian Ponds locations and no other. And you acknowledge that? And I think the question becomes, how do you deal with that? But I think if it goes to a public hearing, then the notice is going to have to go out to many other pond associations specifically to make sure that they can step in if they want to do it. That's the way I would see that issue. The other question is that there are different criteria for seasonal versus permanent piers, but leaving some things in the water when the seasonal part is removed is fairly common. So that's an issue that may not be as easy as it appears. So I think what I'm really trying to say is that this is not. I'm in favor of the concept to discuss it. I think it's a good topic to air, but I look at we're dealing with and there are in other towns on the Cape. There are no differentiations between fresh and salt water. We here in Barnstable have a lot of freshwater venues and a lot of saltwater venues. So that may be why ours has been the way it is. And John Ebedili may have additional thoughts as to why it has been kept separate, and I look forward to hearing what he may have to say about that. So I've said enough at the moment, but I want you to know that I've got an open mind on it, and I want to see where we can go with the topic and how we can make it be efficient. So thank you for listening to my thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry. John?
Yeah, a couple of comments. As you go back and look at the history of it, it was clear to the commission that there is a significant difference between saltwater and freshwater situations, which is why the guidelines were different. I mean, certainly as we look at the 30-inch rule, the 12-inch rule, et cetera, that exists under the saltwater guidelines, that they would not be applicable. One comment I think is really critical, or two comments. One, in my opinion, we cannot carve out certain ponds to be treated one way and other ponds to be treated under a different set of guidelines or regulations. I think that would be totally unacceptable from a legal point of view. Secondly, every one of our regulations and guidelines says something would be looked on a site-specific basis. That is also, I think, a legal requirement that every site be looked at individually. A third point is as we look at a request for a freshwater dock here, we do look at them on a site-specific basis. We ask the consultants or the applicants to come in and describe it. And we look at those not just from what do the neighbors want, although a butter input is critical in every hearing. I would underscore that. But we look at it from the environmental issues that are impacted upon, one of which is recreation. So certainly about as concerned about the impact of, I think one of you mentioned, you know, that we use these even in the colder weather they use. And if a certain dock design impedes recreational activities, that is a legitimate concern for the Conservation Commission. But we are restricted to looking at the environmental issues and concerns that come before us on an application, and not, you know, and we can't go beyond those from a legal point of view. So I'm okay, because it has been a while, to relook at the freshwater guidelines, to understand maybe some of the past decisions that we've looked at and say, hey, is there more science now that didn't exist before? Are there changes that we should think about? So I'm absolutely okay with that. But I think I would say with a caveat that something that is site specific is always going to be in there. And I don't think we would have the legal authority to carve out, you know, this lake from it. It would have to be town of Barnstable wide, because we act under the town ordinance. So that's where I would be coming from.
Thanks, John. Bill?
Yeah, I've got the idea of the geographic limitation. John suggests that, well, we really can't just carve it out separately. And I'm thinking that the Indian Pond Association is 3 large ponds. In fact, I believe Mystic is the 2nd largest lake in the town, and I'm thinking Middle Pond is the 3rd. And so these are like unusual large lakes. And by and large, they are, they're all seasonal docks where everyone, you know, takes them out. And there is this aesthetic, if you will. It's a beautiful, you know, lake shore in these lakes. There are 3 lakes there. Hamlet Pond, by the way, is, I don't know what, the 5th largest or whatever. These are very large lakes. And in the fall and in the spring and in the winter, there aren't docks. And it just has this kind of like a throwback to the 1940s or the 1840s or what have you. And so there's an aesthetic element. And so I can't help but think that just to make it legal, to make it an ordinance that we're going to protect this, I think you would need to have a clause in the preamble, I guess. And here's my question. My question is, can we even deal with aesthetics in an ordinance? And that's something, can conservation commissions bring in aesthetics as a reason to be? And if they can't, then we're in trouble with this particular petition and request, because we go round and around the axle over seasonal dock in the marine. And we, you know, and there you've got shellfish that are being harvested, and you don't have shellfish being, you're not going to be harvesting these mussels to speak of. And so therefore the recreational aspect is really less. I mean, granted, you could argue, well, you can't get your boat in here or what have you, because you got a stinking dock in the way. But, you know, we're battling over the marine docks and trying to keep them seasonal. It makes it even more difficult if it's fresh water and you don't have mussels. So could you, I guess my question to y'all who have a lot more experience on the Conservation Commission or to Darcy, can you make something so, you know, here's the ordinance with a really heavy basis on aesthetics? And if there is precedent in the state of Massachusetts where, yeah, that's held up in court, then you would need a separate ordinance that would, talk about the reason we want to do this is because of the blah, 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 and the aesthetics and whatnot. And then, you put it in. You have to have a seasonal dock. So my question to Tom, to the Conservation Commission and to Darcy, can we make them seasonal on the basis, largely, if you will, on aesthetics?
Let me try to answer your question. I mean, this is only my perceptions. So long as I have been with the commission close to 15, 16, 17 years, whatever. And under the Concom's jurisdictions, we have a tough time trying to regulate aesthetic or the view from the house. It's very difficult because we don't have a performance standard to define what it is. And I mean, not even with this freshwater pond. A lot of times when we talk about, some building and aesthetic and all that stuff, we run into trouble, legally. And that's my perceptions. I mean, can you try to define it and be better? I mean, unless you're really, really smart and trying to have established some kind of a very, performance standard per se to justify your legal means. I mean, that's I'm come from. But John can answer that question. He's a lawyer. Larry.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm coming back now, Bill, and I want to go over this. The key difference that I see with respect to the standards deals with whether it's seasonal or permanent. I think it's not unreasonable to have there be clearly defined criteria for one or the other, but not necessarily excluding one or the other. I think the concept of aesthetics, maybe it deserves a little more recognition than it gets, but I don't think it can be a standalone condition or a criteria. I think that the other question, though, is that, and true, we are struggling with the seasonal versus permanent on the saltwater side, and we're going to have to come up with some criteria if there's going to be a clear definite distinction. But we'd have to do the same in the freshwater as well. There's two factors, however, that I think, Bill, might be satisfactory to the Indian Ponds people. And one is safety, and the other is navigation. Those, I think, are criteria that perhaps could be considered in light of the shoreline and whatever else goes on at the pond. But I think the mandating removal is something that we do sometimes as opposed to permanent. So I'm going to stop now, but I think that's where I am on those issues that you've raised, and I'll see who else have anything else to add to distinguish what I've said or agree.
Thanks, Larry. John?
I think Larry raises a good point when he says aesthetics, which, Tom, you're right. We have had our hands slapped when we've tried to rely on his aesthetics. So I'd be very, very careful with that, Bill, in trying to come down to it. But as Larry said, it can be a factor that we consider, yes, but to rely on it would be very dangerous. Secondly, I would restate my feelings that we could not geographically carve it out. I mean, if you want to use aesthetics or recreation or navigation, it's going to apply to every freshwater pond. Lake Wequakin, for example. I mean, and everything does have to be site specific. Finally, I think we've been very, very, very successful in saying freshwater piers and docks are seasonal. I think the argument comes in is, and this is where George Gilmore would be a great help. There are, some have totally removable, some leave a little sand in the water, et cetera. And we have to look at those on a case-by-case basis. To the Indian Rivers folks, I would tell you, if you do get a butter notification, it is critical as an abutter for you to come to the hearings, get on a Zoom or whatever, wherever it's held, and express an opinion. But not just, I don't like it. It has to be based on the environmental issues and an impact on such things as recreation or navigation, et cetera. And that kind of testimony should come before the commission and is further evaluated by the commission. And George, you may have more to say about design of seasonal.
Thanks, John. George?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Yeah, obviously, seasonal docks are made for smaller craft. The only time we really get into an issue with a seasonal dock in fresh water, occasionally in Waquacket Lake, we've had problems with it. I can't think of any place else where we've really had a problem with a seasonal dock, but all is incumbent upon water depths and the size of the vessel that's going to be at the dock. And obviously Indian Lakes in this region, it's limited to 9.9, I believe, horsepower. So it limits the size of the boat.
Right.
Right. But yeah, so that's what it really comes down to. And I agree. With you, John, I don't know if they'd have a little problem just saying that limit it to that geographic area. I think that could cause problem, but whether we decide to do it in all freshwater areas or not, that's remains to be seen. But I think it's worth the discussion.
Thanks, George. Louise?
Well, I mean, I think that we have been successful using the guidelines in freshwater situations. However, if you look at the results of the Flume Avenue decision and what's going in there, obviously a lot of people in the Indian Lakes Association are not happy with that. So maybe we ought to look at the elements of that installation or what is going to be installed and say, well, how does the current set of guidelines fail? And is a correction of that something we want to tackle?
How would we reopen a closed hearing, Louise?
I wouldn't open the closed hearing at all, but I would revisit it and find out, how our current process has developed something that the people in that community are really unhappy with, and a lot of people. And maybe we'll say that's fine, and this is how we're really happy with that. But given the regulations, how did that all develop?
But we couldn't go back and reopen that hearing.
I wouldn't reopen it, but I would re-examine.
With what end? I'm just confused as to how discussing Flume Ave individually, we have jurisdiction to even do that.
I don't think we have to have jurisdiction. We're not reopening it. We're not reconsidering it. So I don't understand how we need we can look at our historical behavior or results and examine, well, maybe we wouldn't, maybe we're not feeling happy with that.
So for future cases.
For future cases.
For future cases, you can do it. Yeah, if that's what you're saying.
For learning.
Yeah, that's fine. Now, if that's what you're saying, yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, that's.
Yeah.
But you couldn't go back and change that old decision.
Absolutely not.
Okay, I misunderstood. I'm sorry. Going forward makes sense.
No, but I am saying let's learn from our existing process, and if we want to change the process for future.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Thanks, Louise. Larry?
I put my hand up for one reason, and Louise just gave me a second reason. The one reason I put it up for is that freshwater seasonal docks are pretty much weekend things with a keg of beer. you simply, when you're going to put it in, you get a bunch of people together, they put it in. When you're going to take it out, you reverse it. Whereas the saltwater seasonal piers are causing problems, and George can elaborate on this further if needed. It's getting contractors to go in and do it. So it's a little easier to have seasonal piers in and out. The other question, though, and I was following up on what Louise said, I think that the issues that were in existence on any prior application should be used as a tutorial for issues to consider going forward. I think that that would be something that would be very useful. I would have no problems with this particular property of coming up with a whole list of topics. But that's not why we're here today. We're here today to try to decide, can we incorporate this proposal by Indian Ponds, and if so, to what extent? So that I think is the issue. And what we've kicked around is some of the things that are concerning to us and that we realize are going to have to be dealt with some degree of diplomacy. So that's my conclusion on those points. Thank you.
Bill?
Yeah, I think that it's actually pretty clear and straightforward and simple to understand why the Indian Pond Association is where they're at. And a lot of this, most of this, all of this has to do with the 24 flume dock. The 24 flume dock, the original proposal was for a permanent dock, a long dock. I can't remember how far out it went. It was like 80 feet, I think. Don't quote me, but I think it was like 80 something feet. And it had an L on the end. A huge dock, permanent dock. Well, the Indian Pond Association did not like that. And in the hearing, there was a lot said. And as it turned out, that dock ended up losing its L. It ended up being considerably shorter. I can't remember if it was 45 feet, 50 feet, but it was like a 30, 35, 40% shortening of that dock. And it was supposed to be the Conservation Commission said, yeah, and it should be a seasonal dock. However, a provision was allowed for quote unquote helical piles to be left in the substrate. They were 18 inches tall. Some of them would be below water. Some might jut just above the water. But these 18-inch helical piles were viewed as something for fishermen to trip over, for kayakers to run into, for boaters going along the shore to run into. And it was or even swimmers to smack into if you had a wetsuit and you're in the winter or what have you. But the point is that these helical piles were a safety issue. The Indian Pond Association was very upset about the fact that the helical piles were left. They were quite happy with the way the Conservation Commission operated and made it shorter and made it seasonal. But they really did not like the helical piles because they are a safety thing. I will tell you that helical piles are something that I can remember. I recused myself from that discussion. I watched it on Channel 18, and there was questions, if you review that particular hearing, where it's like, what's a helical pile? Well, it may be a good idea. I don't know, what's a helical pile? And I remember Pete specifically goes, oh, we could put in a helical pile. We don't have to keep digging it out. Oh, let's do that. And everyone goes, yeah, okay, well, let's do it. No one thought about the safety issue. The precedent. This was a weird thing, this helical pile. Who knows about putting them in a seasonal docks context? And that's what they're upset about, plain and simple. And so therefore, trying to make it a seasonal dock and not have helical piles is a big deal. And so, I think that, Louise, you're saying, well, we should think about what happened. Well, that's what happened. And, John is right. We can't just go back and take the helical piles out. It was appealed. DEP upheld the Conservation Commission. Now it's in a licensing format that what is it, 90, chapter 90, what, 3? Can't remember. 91. But anyway, they're going through that process again, trying to deal with the helical piles.
Thanks, Bill. Louise?
I think helical piles and the safety issues, I think that's something that we ought to think about in terms of all freshwater docks. And I think George would probably be a better person to talk about that in general. But in terms of the safety issue, I think that's really important. In terms of talking about aesthetics, maybe that's a zoning issue, not a conservation kind of thing. And maybe the Indian Lakes Association ought to be thinking about approaching the town for with zoning questions. Maybe that would be an easier fit than with conservation. Maybe this is not a solution. Their solution may not be just with us. It may be with other agencies within the town.
Thank you, Louise. That's an option that I think in the past, and I kind of mentioned it before, on and off type situations. So we can keep that in mind. George?
Yeah, I have very little experience with helical piles because they came into, well, they've been in use for a long time, but we haven't used them here. We use them as in the mooring fields, Hyannisport area. I know Falmouth uses them in their mooring fields, they've been used for for foundation support, which is basically what's happening here. I don't recall exactly the design on it. I see Arlene's in the audience, and I don't know if it's appropriate that because she's in front of Chapter 91 with us right now, whether she'd want to talk to how much of those helical piles stick up and how much don't, and how the attachment is going to happen for the superstructure. But she would probably know that better than I.
Thanks, George. I'll go to our Larry, Commissioner Moore, and Larry before I go back to the
Thank you. I think concerning the zoning idea, when we were down at the town dock in Katuitt on the McKinnon properties, there was something passed in '98 that was a zoning restriction concerning a moratorium on piers. That was the only incident in my recollection that we ever deferred to zoning. As a matter of fact, we felt we wanted them to make the ruling on it. I think that there's two different areas under the regulations, and I don't think that zoning really has much to do with water. I think it has to do with a dock and pier, because that would touch the land. So I just think we have to be a little careful about just thinking zoning is going to come to the rescue on this subject. That's how I see it, but I could be wrong.
Thank you, Larry. I'm going to Larry from Indian Pond.
Thank you. This issue about aesthetics, and I understand how that's kind of a gray area, how you would define aesthetics. But I'd like to just point out that if the docks are in fact seasonal, the docks are out of the water in the off season. And the second part of that is the fact that a seasonal use dock is the materials are not to be in place in any wetland resource area. I know on my particular dock and my two abutters, it's in the conditions that the dock, when it's taken out, be stored in the uplands.
Right.
But if you walk around the lakes today, you will find pieces of docks, dock sections, etc., because oftentimes, it's a relatively high hill to climb depending on the lot. These docks get left on the side of the lake, on the side of the pond, for storage through the winter. I don't think there's anyone that particularly is in position to go enforce that, because you got to get out on the water and actually look at these things and see them around. So I think one is getting them out of the water, and the second is enforcing, in fact, making it a regular part of the order of conditions that these be stored in the uplands, so that they're not fully visible on the pond. That goes a long way. that goes a long ways towards solving the aesthetics issue right there, if those two things come into place.
Tom, don't we normally include that though?
Yeah, normally we're including that as a order conditions so that you have to store the seasonal portion of the, floats and all that stuff in upland area.
I
And
understand. I understand.
The problem for us is the enforcement. We don't have enough people or staff to do a lot of enforcement. Right now, Ed is very busy, just purely on enforcement. And that's not even going to the freshwater pond yet.
I'd like to correct that. We do allow it occasionally on beaches and freshwater.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
It's dealing more with the impact on the vegetation. So if there is a beach area and somebody doesn't have enough upland, we've allowed it to go onto the beach.
Okay.
Good point, Darcy.
Thank you. George?
No, that's just exactly what I was going to say. So,
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay. Any other questions from the commissioner? Or from the Indian Point associations? So let me summarize this and see what. Let me summarize this, what I'm hearing, and then you guys can make a comment whether that would be what we're heading to or not. Is I'm hearing that, we cannot really just put a regulation just on the Indian Pond associations without putting the regulation on the other ponds. And we may be able to look at the review our freshwater guideline stuff to updating some of the requirement in terms of the support and so forth. I think that's all we can do at this point. Any thoughts?
I would suggest, Tom, if I can, I just following up on that, I think it's, worth each commissioner taking a look at the freshwater guidelines and sending in thoughts that they may have on changing, modifying, sending them into Darcy for distribution. And then if you thought it was worthwhile, schedule a discussion about it at an open meeting.
Thank you, John. I think that's about the same line that I'm thinking. Larry?
My only additional comment is whether or not the freshwater provisions can convert to their own regulation rather than be incorporated in 703. It could be 703A or something, but I'm just kicking that idea around. But I recommend that what we do in the meantime, as John Abadili recommended, that we take a look, we refresh ourselves on the freshwater guidelines to see if there's things that can be improved. And secondly, I think that we need to identify the other water bodies in the town. We don't have to go into other towns, but in the town, to what extent would other water bodies be included? Quacket is obviously one of them. But I think that if that's something that either the staff could do or delegate to one of us, I'll be glad to help do that, identify the different water bodies. Then we know the extent of what we're dealing with in terms of interaction. So those are two thoughts that I have.
Thank you, Larry, because that would be a huge task to do.
And one that I'm not sure is anyway justifiable.
I think if we just call it fresh water and salt water, I think we're
absolutely.
I think we should keep it as a freshwater guideline, and then we can modify the terms under that guideline and improve that. I think that's all we can do at this point. Larry from Indian Pond Associations.
Yes, I know that you're referring to the freshwater guidelines. I'd like to know what they are, because you specifically say in the language here that these regulations will not apply to freshwater ponds and lakes.
There's a separate set of guidelines for freshwater.
Excuse me?
There's a separate set of guidelines that Darcy can send you, or you can get from Darcy.
I printed everything. I printed everything on the web this morning. I've read it 3 times. I don't see it.
No, we have a separate guideline for that.
They're under special other information or special information. It's not a regulation, so it's not found under the regulation link on our website.
Right.
So that will specify length of dock, amount of frontage, seasonal, all that's in this set of guidelines somewhere?
You can take a look at them, sir, and find them all if you have questions.
We can
You should take a look at them. That's good starting place.
We can send that guideline to you.
Tom,
Send it push so that you can, distribute it. Bill?
would it be appropriate to ask the IPA, Indian Pond Association, for input on freshwater guidelines?
Yeah.
I mean, we could get input from them.
We can look at that from the commissioner's standpoint. I mean, for your comment to look at, I don't think there's an issue. I don't think there's a problem. We welcome all your comment stuff if we want to make any changes to the freshwater guideline. I think that's open.
I just put them up on the screen. They were under special instructions because they're not a regulation.
Yeah.
And they're on our website.
And those guidelines we have really stuck to pretty well, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
The reason we didn't want to get into the whole thing about specifically like size and depth, we do say it should have a foot under the vessel, but it would give the commission some area to kind of look at it as a site specific thing, instead of adopting a regulation as far as the ones in saltwater.
And that is absolutely critical that everything be site specific to be sensible.
I wouldn't recommend going in and making these a full regulation.
Well, Tom, can we just agree to move on and that the commissioners or anybody else can send comments to Darcy and Darcy could just distribute them and then we could go from there?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So, Commissioner, you have some homework to do. Bill, you can forward that freshwater guideline to the Indian Pond Associations to get their feedback. So,
Okay.
let's move on to the next one. Richard Hagan, NGMBA, Cape Cod, discuss Porta Johns at West Barnstable Conservation Area. Richard? Is Richard here?
Yes, hi. Thanks for having me today. My name is Richard Higgins. I represent the New England Mountain Bike Association, Cape Cod chapter, and I'm the treasurer. I'd like to thank Ed Hoops for corresponding with me for a few weeks on what I'm about to ask you for. He's been great. Thank you, Ed. We do quite a bit in the town of Barnstable in terms of trail maintenance for our association, which is mountain bikers. For the last several years, we've sort of adopted a parking spot for the West Barnstable Conservation Area off of Race Lane. The exact address is 1590 Race Lane. Our members have built a nice, fairly large picnic area with an overhanging roof. And we've also paid for a porta potty there since 2017. And I've been treasurer since the end of last year. We're a pretty small organization with not a lot of funding. So what I'm looking for is some help from you guys for a seasonal porta potty there.
Thank you, Richard. My first thought is, for the conservations, I think we have our limited staff and the budget to deal with anything at this point. So, my inclination is not taking any additional management of the porta potty and the funding of it. But that's my thoughts. Commissioner, you guys can make any comments to, or question to Richard.
Can we hear from Darcy, Tom?
Yeah, Darcy.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I had Ed place this on the agenda because I have concern about, making this one area having a porta potty, because then we're going to start having requests that we have them installed at other parking areas. I'm sorry, I don't recall whether we ever approved the first one to go in. It was before Ed joining us as the agent. I don't know whether Martin okayed something, but I'm sorry, Richard, did you remember whether you got permission to put that in?
I wasn't involved with the club since it's been in since 2017. So I don't know the answer to that question. I know there are other parking locations, but this is the one that gets the most traffic for West Barnstable by far. I mean,
I just have concern. My concern is we're going to be the ones that get the phone call if it isn't clean enough and they start having to place them at other parking areas. So I was not really in favor of this, but it's up to the commission on the management of these areas.
Thank you, Darcy. Louise?
I just wanted to say I missed my chance. I need to recuse myself. My husband's an active member of NEMBA. So just that.
Thank you, Louise. Larry?
I have a couple of preliminary questions. Maybe I didn't catch it, but going back to the young man that was just talking, Richard, who owns this property? Is it town property or is it private property? Because to give permission to put anything there, if it's town property, then Darcy's concern is blinking red lights. But if it's other property by private, then Darcy, might they not be simply filing an RDA? And then
Larry,
they would,
it's a conservation area that the Conservation Commission manages.
okay.
We have a management plan written for a majority of our areas. So this is why it's on the agenda, because this would have to be something that the commission votes on. And I only caution, if you approve it for here, we're going to have other people calling and wanting
I apologize. I didn't make the connection right away.
That's okay.
So what we're looking at, as I see it, is that I don't know why we would impose upon the staff or the commission to take that on. I understand the purpose for having it, but the ends don't necessarily justify the means in this case. So I support your position, Darcy, on that, and I see where it's going.
Thank you.
George?
Darcy, do we have any other places where we supply porta potties? I can't think of any.
No.
I know they do. Sorry, I know they do at the pickleball courts, which is town owned, and as well as the disc golf.
Well, that's recreation.
But that's
all recreation, yeah.
It's still town.
Yeah,
but
different budget.
Here we're only talking about the conservation divisions or the conservation commissions. We don't have a jurisdiction with the recreational or the DPW in terms of how they want to do the porta potty stuff.
So, okay.
There would be some other grant or tourist grant, or you can talk to DPW recreation and see whether they have the funding to help you on this.
I guess just Tom, Richard, could you go to DPW, and if they agree to be responsible for it, then it would be a RDA or desk request for conservation to put it on conservation land. But we are so stressed out with our staff, keep asking for help in our budget, that, as Darcy said, for us to take this one on could be 10 more, and we just can't handle it. So I think DPW may be better equipped to do it.
Either DPW or recreation.
Recreation has already said it's not their property, it's conservation property, so they said no.
Okay.
Okay, so are you saying that even if we choose to pay for this in the future, we should have permission from the Conservation Commission in order to put it there?
we should, according to paperwork wise, we should have some kind of tracking, whether you filed it from a simple RDA or whether it's administrative approval stuff. I think we should look at that.
Yeah, it wouldn't be an
Pretty simple.
RDA. That's dealing with wetland conservation jurisdiction. It would just be some kind of a letter stating, or to the Conservation Commission asking if they're okay with NIMBA providing a porta potty john at this location, and then who is going to be the contact person for that porta potty if somebody wants to complain that it's not clean or something. So you'd have to write something up and have the commission, I guess we'd put it back on the agenda, if that's the way the commission's leaning, that they would allow you to put one there, but we are stepping back from management of that porta potty, and you would be paying, resuming the responsibility for payment, and that it's clean, and that it's, removed at the end of the season.
Right. Well, that's what we've been doing for 6 years.
Okay.
But I'll have to talk to the rest of our folks and see whether they want to go ahead for paying for it in this upcoming year.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. The next item is the annual reports 203, 205, and 211 Scudder Lane projects. Catherine?
Hi, Catherine Ricks here with Coastal Engineering on behalf of the applicants, or actually the clients on this one. We submitted our monitoring reports, and then it was requested to come in front of the board to discuss it. I did receive a couple comments, which were not out of the norm, pretty expected, on the property that has the fiber rolls. So right now I'll address a couple things. The fiber rolls, when they were put in, it was a different applicant for that project, and now the new homeowner, I did discuss with her that some nourishment should be placed over those. I can continue that discussion with her, and any repairs to the fiber rolls that are there's a couple fiber rolls that are not doing great, but fiber rolls are intended to break down. That's why they're there. They're intended to just kind of hold the slope and not erode a lot while the vegetation takes hold. So they're doing their job. They just should be covered a little more. So I will continue that conversation with that client. And then
Catherine,
the other,
yep. Can you share the report?
Yes, I can. Let me. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So these are the fiber rolls that are out there. Let me make sure I'm on the, yep. So these are in good condition. They break down when a little bit faster when they're open to UV light. So I did discuss some potential nourishment with the client that's there. So my question, this client at 211 Scudder did close out their permit because there was a change in hands of the property. It went from one owner to another. In order to put nourishment or do any maintenance on those fiber rolls, would they need an RDA because it's nothing new, no new impacts, or would it need to be a new application for nourishment?
Did you say your previous client has already got the COC?
Yes, this one did because it was 211 is that first property and it changed hands after the first application. So typically when someone sells their house, they close out the open permits if there's no additional construction to be done on them. The construction was complete, so they closed out the permit. We did submit the monitoring report, but the actual permit is closed. So in order to do the maintenance, there was no ongoing conditions that I saw. So in order to do the maintenance, would it be an RDA or would it be a full new permit to just repair and place again the nourishment that was in that original permit?
I would say it's an NOI because of the condition that we can place on for you to do the maintenance stuff. Under the RDA, we don't have an opportunity to put any conditions or for ongoing maintenance type conditions. But that's my thought. Larry?
Darcy, this question's for you. I seem to remember that there were some certificates of compliance that might have been covered on those 3 properties in Scudder Lane. What's the status of that? If the certificate of compliance has been issued, is it over? They can't come back with a revised or an amended order of conditions or anything at that point. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe what she's saying is we're covering the first piece of property that was the fiber rolls and because there wasn't a request to continue the maintenance on this, that Tom is recommending that a new notice of intent be submitted.
Okay.
And with that notice of intent, a description that they would like to continue in the future in perpetuity, or the commission can say they have to maintain it in perpetuity in that notice of intent application, and we'd have a special condition.
Okay.
I don't believe the other ones are closed out.
Okay. You have answered my question procedurally, and I think that was the matter that needed to be clarified. So I think that's been answered in my opinion. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and as far as I know, the other 2 are still open.
Okay.
So that's 211. So the other 2 are 203 and 205. Those have the rock revetments in front, and more the concern on those is the overwash that's occurring from upland. And that's actually the reason these are still open, because that is going to be addressed within the next 2 weeks. Is the timeline that's planned with Robert B. Hour is going to be out there putting in drainage structures up at just off the top of the bank where we had that additional plan. So this is one additional drainage structure that will occur over towards where there's overwash here. There's runoff here that's causing some erosion of the bank. So there's additional approved drainage structures here. And then additionally, there's another drainage structure on 203, which you see the overwash and the erosion in this part of the bank. And this is going to be put in, and these are still not there. They're going to be there within the next week or 2 is the plan for Robert B. Hour. I've been in touch with them. So those are still open, and that was on these, the erosion that shows, in this area is the one up from 205. Hopefully that the drainage structure up there will slow the overwash and the erosion that's occurring here. And this is one of the drainage structures that we put in, but this second one is going to be put in over here to reduce the erosion that's occurring in this area here. So at this point, that's ongoing right now. And then the monitoring reports are supposed to be submitted within the first 3 years. This 2022 was only the second one, so they still have another one. So you'd still receive another monitoring report that would address the work that's been done and any changes to that next year. So I don't know if there's anything to really be done on it until that work is done.
Thank you. I see 2 hands up, Louise and George. Louise?
You said that there were some drainage structures that have been approved that were going to be put in shortly, right?
Correct.
So why, since they were approved and obviously done because there has been a problem, why weren't they put in a long time ago?
Initially, that wasn't known that was causing the erosion on the bank, that the overwash from above was actually causing the erosion. So this wasn't in the initial application for the NOI. These were amendments that were added later in 2021. So that's why there was some put in, and then not all of them were put in time, and then they're continuing the work now. Some were put in last fall. The continuation of it is to get them in now.
Yeah, except 2021 was a long time ago. And certainly there's been enough time to witness the erosion. So I'm surprised that it's taken this long to plan on actively implementing that fix.
Yes, I've just got these projects back, so I am not sure what the delay in putting these structures in was.
Okay, well, I'm glad you're doing it now, for sure.
George?
Yeah, and Catherine, I know you're new to this, fairly new to this project, but We, as a commission, identified that the source of runoff was upland way back when. I mean, right after this project was supposedly complete, we identified it at that point. We were the ones that made those first drainage structures be approved and installed. And we were assured that those drainage structures were sufficient to take care of all the runoff that was going to take place up there. So now we're adding some more, which were identified in 2021. And again, I know this isn't your problem because you're new to this project, but it's a little disappointing to us as a commission that we are doing engineers' work for them and then identifying it, giving them approval for it, and not seeing it put in. And now this is the result of what we have. So I just want to make it clear that, you know, that is a little bit disappointing to this commission. The other thing is, Darcy, on these, is there not a maintenance in perpetuity on these? Doesn't it follow the property, not the owner?
I'd have to check the orders for this one. The first one that she was describing did not have the maintenance clause on it, I guess.
So as a commission, I think we got to be very careful when we approve these in the future. We want to make sure that it's not a 3-year deal. It's in perpetuity, so that we're making sure that we don't get faced with a problem like we got in that fiber roll. Thank you.
Thanks, George. John?
George, good points. My memory is exactly the same as yours. It was we, especially Peter and you and Tom, when you went out there, that identified the source of this as being the runoff, not washout. And I really am concerned. I think going forward, we're going to have to put in timelines that we've not done. So not give them the 3 years to get the work done or whatever, that, you know, these kinds of things that are causing serious problems in a gorgeous area, we say that construction must be done by X period of time. And maybe that's a lesson we've learned, that I've learned from this at least.
Agreed, John. And also, I mean, now you got a problem that's, you know, it's not huge. It's not huge problem, but if it were let go for much longer, it could become a huge problem where you're going to have equipment down on that beach again, and et cetera, et cetera. So we sure don't want to have that happen.
Catherine, two questions. Number one, do you need any equipment down to the beach area, or you can just pretty much do it from the upland side?
The drainage structures will be from the upland side. Once we go and address any nourishment that has to occur or any additional, well, the vegetation wouldn't need equipment, but the nourishment would need equipment on the beach. So when we go to addressing that for the fiber rolls, or potentially putting them, actually, these eroded areas may not need equipment on the beach. Just covering the fiber rolls would need the equipment on the beach, which is just that first property.
Would staff be involved before that, Tom?
What?
Yeah, that would need the full NOI that we'd have to go for, because there's no continued. Yeah.
Correct. So the other one, you can do it as much as you can, but you don't need to access through the beach to do any repair work stuff. Right?
I don't believe they're gonna need any access to do any of the drainage, the upland drainage structures on those.
So for those two properties that still have a valid order of conditions, I would suggest that if you're doing the additional drainage structure stuff, and as you mentioned, you're going to do that in a couple of weeks. I think by the time you finished in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, at least you should mention it to the office and say, yeah, your drainage structures are in, and continue to do your maintenance on that slope. And then at least advise the office there. And I know Peak sent out a comment emails to you and asking and see whether you guys can come back in 6 months and tell us the progress on that. Would that be okay with you?
Yes. So a 6-month update from now?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Because we should keep an eye on this to make sure that, you know, your drainage structure in your necessary maintenance stuff is all done rather than wait for a year. Luis?
So when do you expect that you would be sending us an NOI on the first property?
I have to discuss it with the client, so I'm not sure at this time.
Okay, well, I think, you know, in my opinion, the sooner the better, obviously.
Yeah.
We're into the growing season, et cetera, so this would be a really good time to do that. And we don't want to go another season or another year.
Right.
Yes. So, thank you.
Thank you, Luis. George?
Yeah, and Pete made a good point too. It's with the cloth on the embankment, it's very difficult to tell how much undercutting there is behind that cloth. My concern is if we got a lot of undercutting on the backside of that cloth, how are you going to take care of that? And perhaps we should, Darcy should get a process of how this is going to take place. I understand the drainage, that's no problem. That's all going to be done from up above. That's easy. But if you got to fill underneath that cloth, it probably means you got to take that existing cloth out. You can probably fill from above, replace the cloth, but I think there should be a methodology submitted prior to that happening. I don't know how the rest of the commission feels about that, or Darcy. I just think it's important.
I was trying to look at the order of conditions for these two projects. I think to have them go back onto the beach and everything, because that's a lot to get organized. We have to get into the whole thing with MEA and the seasons and everything. That should almost be like a new notice of intent. So I'm a little concerned.
I think, they're going to file a notice for the first property.
Mm-hmm.
But my concern is if there's a lot of erosion underneath that filter cloth, which is exactly what Pete mentioned also, I don't know how they're going to fill that without removing cloth. And they could probably fill that from above, but I'd love to know the methodology. I'd hate to see them just come in and dump fill on top of that right now, because you're not going to fill the void in behind. So that's my concern.
Excuse me, but Darcy, since raising George's point, but since you have open orders on 2 of the properties, that could be a revised request if you felt it was necessary.
Correct.
Procedurally.
So George.
Yeah.
To answer your question, I'm thinking, listening to your comment and then hearing that, I'm wondering whether what I'm thinking is whether that would work or not, because in a sense that they should be going out there and take a look what underneath that blanket and see what the erosion problem is.
Yeah.
And then, maybe give them a month to come back with some kind of protocol if they need to repair something.
Yeah, I think a protocol is very important in this case. Because, we thought we were at our last swing at this the last time we did this. And obviously we're not. So, we got to try this time before they need equipment on the beach.
Right.
We all know what that's going to be like. Before that happens, they've got one last swing at this thing. So let's make sure it's done the proper way. So that's why I think the work protocol is very important. And agreed to an analysis to how much erosion is there underneath that. I haven't climbed down on that bank, but there's certainly some.
Yeah. But timeline-wise, give them a month or something to identify the problem, to identify what the construction protocol or the repair.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think they need to talk to MEA about how many days they would need to have access. They're not coming in down off of that ramp that was set up to be able to do this. They got to come off the side of the
This
the
would all,
boat ramp?
Darcy, this would all be work that would be done from up above.
Okay, but I
Yes.
know you're talking
Yeah.
about the other
And then
access to the beach.
Yeah, and that's, the first one, obviously, they gotta come from the beach. That's in NOI, that's gonna be down the road. But for this repair, I think they can do it from up above. But again, we wanna make sure that it's done properly and that if there are big voids underneath that filter cloth, that the proper procedures followed in order to make it be done right.
Catherine, do you have
Yep.
any question for us?
Nope. So far, what I've written is that you want notification when the drainage structures are in from the most recent ones at 203 and 205.
Yep.
You want a 6-month update on those drainage structures.
Yep.
And then I will speak with the owners at 203 and 205 about getting some fill in on those eroded areas on the bank and talk to contractors about getting it in from above, and then give you a methodology
Construction
from those from those contractors, give you the methodology and what the conditions are under there, and then be able to move forward from there on those, and then proceed with 211 Scudder on a potential the NOI for the nourishment over the fiber rolls.
The other
Did I
thing,
miss?
Sounds good.
the other thing on the construction protocol, you should come back within a month.
Okay.
Take a look at that and then discuss with the contractor and then come back within a month to give us a construction protocol for that.
Yep.
And thanks for your attention to this, Catherine, because this has been an ongoing problem.
You're welcome.
Yes. Thank you. Any more questions for Catherine from the commissioner? See none? Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you very much.
We have one extension request, John and Gretchen's Salusis, SE3-5663, 444 Bay Lane, Centerville. This is the first request. Matt?
Was here.
Is Matt here? Anyone representing the client here?
I'm here for an amendment, 1025 Old Post. I'm not sure what this project is.
Okay, so you're not. I was talking about Matt Eddy from Baxter 9.
Tom, considering that it's first request, should we not just approve it?
Yeah, let's do that. Could I have a motion to approve this extension request?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Albedili,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Byrne,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye,
Moran.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
thank you. We're going in the enforcement orders. The first one is Town of Barnstable and Edmund A. Courtwood, 2415 Meeting House Way, West Barnstable, map 155, parcel 01X.A01, alteration of the buffer to a wetland resource area, vegetated wetland by regrading, scrapping the surface grade without permits. Ed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. This came to me as it was a anonymous report from somebody who was actually sitting in the Wayland Library and saw some activity going on near the wetland. Just to give you an idea of the Meeting House Way, it's up very close to 6A. Wetland in question is in the back here, and we had some small a bit of a activity here with a small bobcat down in this area in the understory. It gives you an idea that again this is all about the 50 foot is somewhere right in this region right about here, and you can see some of the land had been scraped. It goes around the back as well of this barn. And what I'm asking is that they delineate the wetland boundary, that they supply a restoration planting sketch plan for me to review, and then once we get the delineation conducted, we can go ahead and put in I'm asking for a 20-foot buffer strip of native plantings off of the wetland boundary, along with a no-mow demarcation, both on plan and in the field. And again, I'm asking for that because, again, as you can see, most of the building was very close to the wetland and has been there for many, many, many years. So we can conceivably get a 20-foot buffer strip of completely undisturbed area, and then the homeowner has that's what they're actually looking to do, is to try and do some native plantings anyhow, so it sort of fit into their overall plan as it is. With that, Ross Couture, the owner's son, is in the audience. If you have any questions for me or him.
Thank you, Ed. Any question for Ed from the commissioner? Any questions for Ross? Ross, do you understand what Ed is talking about on this enforcement order?
Good afternoon, sir. Yes, I do understand what Ed is asking.
Okay. So I think we're with Ed to provide your wetland delineation maps and the mitigation planting stuff. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Could I have a motion to approve this enforcement order as written?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Lauren.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Kern.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Foster.
Aye.
Abadili. John, you're muted.
Aye. Sorry.
That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commission. Thank you, Ed.
Yep.
Thank you, Ross. I'll be in touch next week. Okay.
Very good. Good night.
The second enforcement order is Stephen M. and Beth F. McFarland, trustees, and McFarland family, 2014 revocable trust, 150 Carriage Road, Osterville, map 071, parcel 015.003, alterations of the 50-foot buffer to a wetland resource area, coastal bank, town, and states by cutting vegetations. Ed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this site is probably familiar to you all. You just recently had done a notice of intent hearing just a few months back, which is at the time when this cutting violation was noticed. You can see over here on the left, it's the GIS rendition. The area that we're talking about in question is here in this red circular area. And again, this is the aerial photo from earlier this month. Again, it's pretty straightforward. You had on the left side here, we have this was from approximately when the house was last up on the market, sometime in 2018 or so. Realtor.com had a picture of the area, and this is more or less the same perspective, a little bit closer up. And so this area at the top of the bank has been cleared of vegetation. Well, vegetation has been cut back. There are some things that may look like they might be trying to grow through the leaf litter, but there were some things like bayberry and things like that had been cut. I did meet with John O'Day and Peter Hansen out on the site about a month ago, and I think we're ready to go with a sketch, a report of a restoration planting here. It's just a matter of Peter getting the final sketch plan pending your approval to me, so we can go ahead and authorize that planting. Sorry. Again, so it's a conservation sketch plan to the conservation staff, planting only on the subject parcel. It did run onto the neighbor's property a little bit. I understand there is. I spoke to Mr. McFarland earlier this morning, and he had said that he has worked out an agreement with the neighbors, so they will actually be doing the restoration planting on both portions of both properties of that portion of the area. then just asking that they complete the planting by June 1st, and then provide 3 annual monitoring reports to staff to commence in October after the first growing season, which hopefully will be this summer. So that's it for that one.
Any question for Ed, Commissioner? None. I can see the homeowner, Stephen McFarland, is here. Steve, do you understand what Ed is asking for under this enforcement order?
He's muted, Tom.
You're muted, Mr. McFarland.
Hi, Steve.
Hi.
Steve.
I do understand, and I fully support it.
Thank you. Work with Ed on this one, and thank you for doing that. Could I have a motion to approve the enforcement order as written?
So moved.
Roll call.
Hearn.
Aye.
Abadili.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Moran.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. That's unanimous.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you very much.
The next enforcement order is Edward M. and Laurie P. Bennett, trustees and AEB Realty Trust, 161 Norrington Lane, Marston's Mill, map 102, parcel 1X0, alteration of a wetland resource area bordering vegetated wetland and 50-foot buffer to wetland resource area, BVW, by cutting vegetations. Ed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe Arlene is representing the Bennetts. I don't know if Mr. Bennett is in the audience or not. This one is a little bit more significant. So this is the area in question where, if you're familiar with the area coming down Willimantic, you've got the boat ramp onto Shubles Pond right here. The area in question is just to the west of that. Just for a matter for reference, the red line is showing the homeowner's vinyl fence in the backyard. You can see it here in 2022 in September. And then again, this photo was just taken April 8th or earlier, about a month ago. And again, it's same fence here. So the whole area in here has been cleared. There was, it's very difficult to see what's in the area, but it looked as though there may be a majority of very invasive material, especially toward the upland side of the buffer. A little bit more realistic and natural type of vegetation in the BVW and the area right down to the pond shore. On the ground, the photo up here looks to the left, so that's looking toward the boat ramp. This one is going, the lower middle is going to the opposite direction, looking to the sort of roughly to the west. And then this is right at just about the boundary of the BVW, looking back toward the subject house. Whoa. And again, you can see the fence here. Mr. Bennett did provide a photo of what the area looked like from his perspective, which is this. So here's the vinyl fence, and so it was fairly well and thickly vegetated. Looks like all the way down, or most of the way down to the pond shore. What again I'm asking for is a enforcement order response plan be filed. This is going to obviously be coming in the fall or late summer, early fall. I don't expect to see any kind of restoration planting going on before the early fall to begin with. Hopefully, most of the restoration planting will be able to be done by the end of fall. That will also give a little bit of time for us to get a little bit of an idea of what's growing back naturally whether it be invasive or it be more native type plants. I'm expecting to see a little bit more native vegetation up by the pond shore coming back, but that can certainly play into ultimately the restoration planting plan that eventually will be submitted. And again, a lot of that will depend on what grows back. In the upland area and through the buffer between the border of the vegetated wetland and the vinyl fence in the back in the homeowner's backyard. I would expect that again, that things are starting to grow back. It does seem as though it's going to be a little bit more of the invasive variety. But again, that can all be reflected in the restoration planting plan. There is reference to a path to allow them to have a small path going down to the water as part of that restoration planting plan. And then the standard order or standard conditions with a restoration plan, demarcation of the 50-foot, allowing a small 4-foot wide path to be put down and maintained through the buffer, and again, any of the and all of the other standard conditions. So I don't know if Arlene has anything she'd like to add. But I will turn it over to you and the commissioners.
Thank you. Questions from the commissioner, Luis?
So some trees were removed, correct?
Yes.
And
they will have to be replaced.
They will be replaced. Okay. So did the homeowner do the removal of materials themselves, or did someone else?
A friend acquaintance of the homeowner. The homeowner works in utility and installation as it relates to airfields. So he had a friend that had the equipment that allowed him to do that type of clearing.
Okay, so it wasn't a professional landscaper.
Not a typical landscaping company. It was somebody who's associated more with the installation of things like runways and taxiways and that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you.
John? John, unmute yourself.
I'm sorry. And it looks like, and perhaps I was looking wrong, but it looks like there was some washout in there. It looked like the bank had been washed out as I get down to the lake. Was that the case or not? And if so, how would that be remediated? Second question, it looks like there was some boats, and I don't know if that's on Mr. Bennett's property or the adjacent property. The third question would deal with how long Mr. Bennett has owned this. I mean, that's really a serious violation. It's pretty obviously it was done to get a view and access to it without conservation approval. So I get kind of concerned about Mr. Bennett and the cutting that was done, and perhaps you can elaborate on that. So those three questions, Ed, if you could.
Yeah, so especially in that aerial photo, the thing that looked like it was washed out is actually just the vegetation. There had been a lot of there, especially down closer toward the pond, there was a lot of phragmites that had been cut, just the old stalks things. And so that sort of had washed around, and that's why it looks like it is. There's also a lot of slash on throughout the cut area.
Yeah.
And so that sort of makes it look like it's eroding, but it's not. It's actually very flat going all the way down from the fence all the way down. The boats are on the other property. And I think Mr. Bennett has owned the property for a significant amount of years. So.
I'm curious, Mr. Bennett, if you're here, why now? Why such severe cutting? If you've lived there for so long, what happened? What brought this on?
I don't think the homeowner is here. Arlene is representing the homeowner.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thanks, Arlene. Maybe you know the answer.
Right. So apparently the property has been owned by Mr. Bennett since 2015. He tells me that when he bought it, there was a clearing in a width similar to what he's done. And he's maintained it sort of off and on. His wife has been sick for the last few years, and he hadn't gotten around to keeping the vegetation down. And so when he went in this time, it was pretty dramatic. The house sits outside your jurisdiction. This is a very long, mostly skinny lot. So he apparently had never had any interaction with you. He understands what he's done in terms of regulatory process that he failed to meet this time. And he is intent upon making this right.
Thanks, Eileen. Well, it's funny, I recently had a chance to address some town councilors, and I'm saying my experience over the last bunch of years is that most of the people who come before us on enforcement just didn't know any better, that they're not evildoers that want to, get value of the land and don't care about the environment. Most of them sound like Mr. Bennett. So that's good to hear. It's also good to hear, I assume you're about to say he's going to fully comply with the enforcement order.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you, Arlene.
Thank you, John.
I will add that he has been very, very cooperative throughout the entire process.
And again, I don't think you agree. That's generally been our experience. Most of these folks just don't understand it. They just don't know. And that's why I would love to see educational programs across the town.
Thank you. Any other questions? None? Could I have a motion to approve the enforcement order as written?
So,
roll call.
Abadili?
Aye.
Lauren?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Foster?
Aye.
Hearn?
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. That's unanimous.
Thank you. Good luck. I'll work with
Thank you.
Ed on this and the homeowner. The next enforcement order is RF Design Painting Corporation, 146 St. Francis Circle, Hyannis, Maps 291, Parcel 227. Alteration of a wetland resource area, BBW, by cutting vegetation and alteration of the 50-foot buffer to wetland resource area, BBW, and unnamed pond, by installing an unpermitted barbecue and fire pits and expanding a shed without permits. Ed?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and I'm not sure if the homeowner, I'm not sure if the homeowner is here or not. I haven't seen him in there, but anyhow, this is another area. It's over on St. Francis Circle. This is the property in question. The pond, I will tell you, it's one of the nicest ponds I've ever been to. It's quite bucolic and quite pleasing to sit next to. So I understand what the homeowner was trying to accomplish here. This actually came in as an observation that there had been a shed that had been expanded. The footprint had been expanded in the buffer zone without any kind of permitting. And then we also, when I got out there, I started seeing some other issues as well. So again, the shed itself was expanded from 8 by 10 to 13 by 18. The building department has had conversations with the homeowner as well. So the homeowner is actually planning on I guess the building department has asked that he reduce the size of the shed back to I believe it's 10 by 18 is what he's aiming for. And then the other issue is that there was a small barbecue pit that Mr. Batiste had been had just literally just started installing just before he got to him. And then there's a small float / dock that is semi-permanent or semi-attached to the shoreline here. This is it's a little bit more difficult. You can see there's a definite demarcation line here between one type of grass and another. At first, I thought there had been fill. There has been no fill as far as I can determine in this area. A lot of the pond, because it's a smaller pond, it's highly dependent on groundwater and the amount of precipitation. So the pond can vary from the shoreline being just about over here all the way up to about here. So it's a fairly significant fluctuation in pond shore. I did give you this red line, so you can take a look here. You can sort of keep an idea. This is 50 feet off of the corner of the house. So you can see on the ground, you go to the beginnings of the barbecue pit, the shed over here, pond shore itself. He did actually plant several trees. There are several river birch that are going to be thriving in this environment, without a doubt. I did speak to the homeowner, and he is very willing to and cooperative in trying to do plantings throughout the buffer. Again, he thought he was doing something good because, again, this area, and you've heard this before, and I think on the same pond, the pond shore prior to his ownership was heavily influenced with a lot of just trash and junk. And I believe he said he's taken several washing machines and car parts and other things out of this buffer area. So it's going to be a little bit more challenging to establish the wetland line, but I think it's going to be someplace right about here. So it's one of the things he's going to be asked to do. He did provide several pictures of the property when he first got into working on the property. So the pond shore itself actually it's filled with a lot of different vegetation. Some of it, a lot of it invasive. Others, it's very herbaceous. It grows very quickly. It becomes very green and lush and oversized in a matter of months during the growing season. When he first moved in, the entire backyard area was sort of like this, where you saw a lot of erosion that was starting to move its way down into the buffer and then eventually down into the pond. He did water, but that's pretty much all he had been doing. He had been watering and throughout last summer and the last couple of years, and basically there's been a lot of grass that's moved into the area, into that pond shore area and the buffer area. So again, what we're asking is that he do a delineation to determine the exact wetland boundary where the BVW currently resides. He should either remove the floating dock. I think he's at this point he was thinking more along the lines of removing it, but he may try it. I said if he does want to keep it, that he's going to have to keep it so that it gets pushed somewhere further out into the water, and that it's moored, and that it's at least a foot and a half of a draft between the bottom of the float and the pond bottom. Again, this is a small pond. It's not a great pond, so it doesn't cover. It wouldn't get covered for a mooring permit through the harbor master. August 1st, they should provide the restoration planting plan that restores that buffer strip. He'll also need to do some monitoring reports with that, and then to file a notice of intent that's going to cover both the shed location and the barbecue and any associated mitigation that's required for that. So that's all coming up over the course of the late summer, early fall.
Any question for Ed?
Yes.
John?
Yes, thank you, Tom. Ed, if it's not tied to the shores on a dock, and I believe we've always held that's not within conservation jurisdictions. All right, so I assume what you're quoting is basically natural resources regulations in that.
Yeah, if you remember, we had a similar situation like this over in another unnamed pond over off Peep Toad. But essentially, the pond isn't big enough to qualify for great pond status, and therefore it doesn't need any particular permitting for that through the state. The harbor master's office says it's a small pond. It's the property ownership goes out to the middle of the pond, and therefore they don't take any jurisdiction over it either. So they don't require the mooring permit. And so what we have done in the past is we've allowed the area to be the float to be significantly pushed off the shoreline, so that it's moored in one spot. It's not attached to the shoreline, so it's not a dock, and yet it still allows for sunlight penetration underneath the floats.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Ed, for the additional information. Bill?
Yeah, Ed, you were, I think, unclear as to how wide you would be restoring the vegetation in that buffer strip. I mean,
it'll depend on where the wetland, the BVW line is actually established. So I don't know how much of that buffer strip is actually BVW versus just something to the buffer to the BVW.
But then we usually try to protect the 50-foot buffer a bit in order to provide some kind of filter, if you will, for runoff of nutrients and soil and poop and who knows what.
Yeah.
So if you end up having a lawn that's clean as a whistle and really manicured, and you mow it down to the BVW, then you're not really creating the natural filter, if you will. And so I'm wondering, are you only restoring the aquatic vegetation?
No, we're restoring the BVW. We're restoring the BVW, and then if they want to, if they want to try and continue to have the barbecue pit and the expanded shed, that's why they have to file the notice of intent, and then you'll go through with mitigation measures will kick in with that. So
maybe
more of the BVW or more of the buffer to the BVW would then be preserved.
But a bordering vegetated wetland is literally wetland, and we usually try to protect the area, that buffer, the upland, which is before you get to the BVW. And I'm not sure what the condition was prior to this work that was done. I mean, it seems like only
grass. It was grass and dirt. Was basically it was a very Cape Coddy lawn would be kind. Would be a kind description. So it was the BVW had clearly been impacted prior to the current owner's tenure. There was a lot of grass and dirt in the back portion of the property between the house and the pond shore. And so that's why I'm trying to get them to restore the BVW. And then anything else that they're going to try and do in between that is really it's bringing it back to better than what it was before. And then if they want to keep the other hardscape, they'll have to file the notice of intent and do the associated mitigation with that as well, which would increase the buffer then.
Then that being said, I guess my comment to the owners is simply that we normally try to protect the buffer area before you get to the BVW, because if you mow and keep that grassy, dirty area just totally clean, it doesn't create the filter needed to protect that BVW you're trying to grow. And so I guess I'm just encouraging you to not just get it clean as a whistle right down to where where Ed is trying to restore the area. There should be, you know, a little more protection. Let the grass grow up, you know, let a little native vegetation happen. And yeah, you can have a path down into it 4 foot wide, but I hate to see the lawn just be continually straight down to the wetland. Anyway. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I
Bill.
think he will have to do, and I think he is willing to do extra planting. He was very, yeah, he was very encouraged by the idea of doing additional types of planting. So I think he would do something like that.
It's good. It's good for the wetland and the pond.
Yeah.
The homeowner is not here, right, Ed?
I didn't see him unless he's. Oh, there he is. Okay, I see him. He's iPhone 13 Pro Max.
Okay. So do you understand what we're asking you to do in terms of delineate the wetland area and then restore some of the wetland area? And then you need to file if you want to keep the fireplace and the barbecue area and the fireplace and the shed. You need to file. You muted. This is Marcelo.
Yeah, Marcelo, can you unmute yourself?
Muted. You're muted. Now we can hear you.
So sorry about
That's okay. So you understand what Ed is asking for you under this enforcement order, right?
100%, yes.
So work with Ed, and thank you for doing that. And you know, resolve the issues with Ed, and restore some of the vegetation in the BBW. So.
Thank
Could I have a
you.
motion?
Thank you for being cooperative. That's great.
Right. Thank you. Could I have a motion to approve the enforcement order as written?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Abadili.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Lee.
Aye.
Moran.
Aye.
Byrne.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. Good luck. Work with Ed.
Thank you, Marcel. I will check in with you next week. Okay.
Hey, appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
The next enforcement order is Barry C. Cosgrove, trustee, and Barry C. Cosgrove Trust, 71 Sandpoint, Osterville, maps 073, parcel 014, alteration of a wetland resource area and a 50-foot buffer coastal bank, state bank, by unpermitted addition of hardscape, change in size and shape of a previously permitted patio. Ed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, the area in question is against out on Sandpoint. The area is flood zone as well as state bank. It sort of centers around this little gray spot here, which was the previously approved permitted patio. It went from this shape to a big circular shape. Sometime in, I think it was late 2021, early 22. It was an associated increase in hardscape and change in footprint, so which caused the issue. And again, I think Arlene Sheep provided these photos. They're pretty good comparisons, but this was what the patio looked like originally. And it went over to this circular shape. It doesn't look as though, at first I thought it had advanced a little bit further down the coastal bank. It does not appear as though that is the case based on these photos. And a little bit more, I did a little bit more measuring from different vantage points. And so it does look like it's more or less the same area. What did happen, it did stay within a planting bed. And again, so it's a relatively minor increase, but we did catch this during a COC request for another project on the property, and we just sort of caught this through the aerial photos. So what I'm asking is that an after the fact request for determination of applicability be with a stamp plan showing the existing conditions be filed, and that they determine if there's going to be any more mitigation. There might, I think Arlene had done the calculations, and I think we're looking at with mitigation maybe a grand total of like 100 and Arlene will have to help you. It's like 100 and some feet additional plantings that I would suggest be put like right in front of that planting area, right in front of that circular patio. So I think that's all I have. If you want to ask questions, me or Arlene.
Thank you, Ed. Arlene, how many square foot did you have?
It looks like it's 44 square feet bigger than the previous patio overall, predominantly in the landward direction. So that would require 176 square feet of mitigation. Some of you may remember this project from 2013 and 2014. There were some significant renovations made to this house, but they were done sort of everywhere. There was a little addition here and a little addition there. And the pool was involved in all of that. I know that we had excess mitigation then. I haven't had a chance to go through that file and find the actual mitigation calculations to see how much overage we had then. But clearly around the base of the wall where they were doing work to replace the old patio with the new one, there's a strip that's probably 5 feet wide around the base of that wall that clearly was disturbed, where we probably need to replant some native shrubs in any event. So we're happy to do that. And Mr. Cosgrove is blaming his wife. He said he didn't even realize that it had been changed in shape. He thought they'd just maintained what was there. So Mr. and Mrs. Cosgrove can fight that out on a separate event stage, and we'll take care of the wetlands issues here.
A very unwise decision on his part.
We will never win over our wives.
Yeah.
Any question for Arlene or Ed? Could I have a motion to approve the enforcement order as written?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Moran,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Byrne,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Foster,
Aye.
Abadili.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
The last enforcement order is Carl Wobinant, 23 Gardens Lane, West Barnstable, map 195, parcel 013, alteration of the buffer to 2 wetland resource area, Garlet Point and Inland Bank, by cutting and removing vegetation. Ed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this is another one of those cases. The homeowner just didn't know that they were supposed to be doing any kind of filing. They are trying to improve the property, and they're trying to do some general cleanup. And what we got again, here's the property in question. The trees are all intact. It was just that this is all an understory issue. So you can see this in the assessor's photo, so you can see what the underground or understory looked like a couple of 3 years ago now. Most of the top of the inland bank was vegetated, still is vegetated throughout most of the bank itself. Again, they were doing more of a cleanup on the understory area. They did some cutting clearly and cleaned up a little bit of the leaf litter, a lot of the leaf litter, and throughout the buffer to the inland bank, and a little bit of the buffer to to Garrett's Pond as well. Garrett's Pond comes in. The buffer only comes in at the very northern end of the property. The rest of this is all inland bank, and again, it's all buffer zone violation, not to the resource area itself. Again, I met on site with the homeowner's son, Ryan, and what I'm asking again for them to provide a restoration planting sketch plan. So they're showing sufficient plantings that they're going to recover that 50-foot buffer in its entirety. We'll get them to mark the area with a permanent demarcation as well. We'll do an on-site meeting between myself, homeowner, and whatever landscape person is going to be doing the actual carrying out the actual planting plan, and then asking that they commence the planting. I don't think they're gonna be able to do too much, if anything, between now and the end of the month, when planting season is typically halted for the summer, and then to pick up anything that they need to do in the fall, and commence with monitoring reports after that. So it'll be, again, depending on how much they can get done before the end of the spring planting, they may or may not be able to commence with the annual reports later this year, or if not, next year after the first full growing season. Again, they're both the homeowner and her son are both very committed to working with the commission, and again, it's not like they're trying to clear cut everything and put in patios and things. They just wanted to spruce up the understory area, make it a little bit neater, and so. But this is where we are. And homeowner and her son are both here as well.
Thank you, Ed. For the homeowner, is that Carla and Ryan?
Yeah, they're. So you can unmute yourself.
You're still muted. While you're working on that, trying to unmute yourself, any question from the commission on this one for Ed and the homeowner? You're still muted. We can't hear you.
At the lower corner.
Oh, there we go.
There you go. Got it.
It's not easy.
No. You understand what Ed is asking for you on this enforcement order?
Yes, most definitely.
Okay. So work with Ed on this. Could I have a motion to approve the enforcement order as written?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Foster.
Aye.
Abadili.
Aye.
Moran.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Byrne.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. That's unanimous.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Carla, I'll check in next week via email or call, give you a call, okay?
Okay, sounds great. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
We have two violation warning letters. I'll just read into the record and I'll see what Ed has to add. The first one is John Circus and Barbara M. Filligans and 26 Cedar Point Revocable Trust, 26 Cedar Point Circle, Centerville, maps 228 parcel 113.002, alteration of a wetland resource area, vegetated marsh and riverfront area by placing 0.5 cubic yard fill. Anything to add, Phil? I mean, to add, Ed?
That pretty much says it all. The homeowners were very, they were very, they thought they were trying to do something good for the herring run, and we explained what they could and couldn't do, and they were very, very apologetic, and understand they shouldn't be doing anything more. So they are very good stewards of the land. It's a beautiful property right along the Herring Run, and they keep it's a beautifully well maintained native planting area all throughout. So
Thank you, Ed. The second violation and warning letter is Mian Say 50 Wayside Lanes, West Barnstable, map 110, parcel 007, failure to maintain proper erosion control fencing. Ed?
That says it all right there.
Okay. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
We have two RDA for this afternoon. The first one is John B. Harry to remove 10 trees and stumps at the back property line with grade hills and add fence at 190 Horseshoe Lane, Centerville, as shown on the assessors map 207, parcel 132. Is John with us?
I am. I'm on a call-in only. I am not on the Zoom itself.
Okay. Do you want to take questions or do you want to talk about your project a little bit?
Yeah, I have no problem. I'll introduce myself. So my name is John Hurley. I primarily live out of Walpole, Massachusetts. My wife and I were very lucky to be able to buy a home down in Centerville back in September of 21. And what attracted us to that area is we had vacationed there for a number of years. And upon buying 190 Horseshoe Lane, I knew that there were some issues with the backyard and, the natural erosion in the back. And I knew that something would need to be addressed. And I say that because, over the last couple of winters, I've had a lot of issues with tree limbs coming down, whether it's a regular stormy day or an overly windy day. But if any of you had an opportunity to go to my property, you would see that the backyard is mounded up pretty well, probably about 4 or 5 feet off the regular grade where the home is. And what I didn't understand was the safety aspect of what was going to happen, as I've been there for a couple of years, because I do have 3 little kids, to the point where I thought that I'd be able to trim the trees. But it looks like, and this is just my opinion, I did speak to a couple of tree people, that some of the trees that are on that mound with the natural erosion in the back, I'm assuming, or just I'm hoping there's not compromise to the root structure of the trees, but I really can't tell. I mean, I'm not a professional, but that's where I concluded where I would like to take some of the trees down. Before, I talked to a lot of the neighbors, specifically the abutters. I know them very well, and I sat down with Chris Kuhn, who owns the property behind me, and then I explained to him what my issues were, and everyone seemed to be in favor of it. And then I spoke to my across the street neighbor. His name is Mike Jimerson, I believe. He's a local architect that I think some of you may know, and became really friendly with him. And that's how I was informed about this process, this RDA process. So I immediately called Emil and had him come out last September and wanted him to take a look at the property and how close the trees are to my house and the safety issue with my kids. And that's really where Emil, walked me through how to get to this point. So, and I'm not really a expert with a lot of the commission stuff. I've actually been sitting on this call for the last 2.5 hours. It's been really interesting. But my family is all into community and the environment in the neighborhood. And I felt like we've been, playing well with others. And the advice that a lot of the neighbors gave me got me to this point. So really, that's the reason why I put the request for determination for that particular project of the trees and the stumps. I was informed by Darcy when I saw her in person that I think we're dealing with a state coastal bank and not a town coastal bank. And again, I'm a novice, so I don't know that much about it. But I was hoping that I would get a favorable result here based on the safety piece. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to, work well with everybody. That's really my piece.
One question I have for you, though, you're talking about regrading. How much regrading are you talking about here?
So if you visited my property, there's a mound that's probably about 25 feet long, wide, I mean, and it's mounded with a number of trees on top of it. I'd like to bring that mound down about 4 feet and grade it with the rest of the property, and then make room to be able to put a fence back there so that my kids don't fall down the hill, because it's a steep 45-degree angle down, probably about 25 feet.
Is that the yellow area that you highlight with yellow with some trees? That's what you're talking about?
That's the property line where the trees are. It's right on the property line of me and Mr. Kuhn. But yes, all the trees are right there. There's a couple of trees to the right that I was going to ask to be taken down too, because it's behind the my shed, and I'm afraid my shed was going to get damaged. But the trees on the mound are really where it would be graded down to the level of the rest of the property.
Thank you. Any question from the commissioner? Larry?
Thank you. John, the yellow line, is the erosion occurring on the Kuhn side of the property? Is that where the erosion is coming in from behind there?
Yes, it's not on my property. It's on Chris's property line.
And is it caused by rain, or is it caused by flood water? What's it caused by?
I don't think there's any water back there at all, to be honest with you. I think it's just natural erosion. So there's don't know anything about any flooding. I don't think I'm anywhere near there. Anything flooding.
All right. And on the landward side, or the side closer to your house, the trees there, have you had branches dropping from those trees onto your property?
Yes, I've had a couple even fall on my house.
Oh,
so yeah, my house to the tree line is probably only about less than 20 feet.
Okay. And have you had any issues with insurance company or anything like that?
No, I'm trying not to have any issues with my insurance company.
Well, that's a natural thing to do. I just didn't know whether you had to file any claims or not. So
no, I was just joking with you, Larry. No, I haven't had any issues, and I'm trying to prevent that from happening. Specifically, something falling on top of one of my daughters.
That's fine. Okay. And do you propose to have somebody come in and cut those trees down for you and remove the stumps, or at least grind them to some extent so you can level the land off? Is that what you want to do?
Yeah, I've already reached out to some local companies, landscaping and tree companies, specifically Treescapes. So I'm trying to keep the business local. Okay. I'm not down there full time, but our house is open year round.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Larry.
Louise?
That bank is very steep. And I would have liked to have seen the trees that you want to remove marked in some way, because it's not clear to me that all of them are on your property. It seemed like there were a lot of trees that were very close to the top of the coastal bank. And because of the steepness of the bank, and also sort of the ambiguity of where the this rise in this rising land is, I get really concerned about the regrading that you're going to do, because we really don't have much detail in terms of what's going to happen. So I'm not sure an RDA, given the description that you've given us, is going to be adequate to protect against a lot of erosion running down that bank. So I have a concern about this.
Okay, I understand.
Larry, your hands are still up.
I put it back up. John Abadili's up too. John, why don't you go ahead, and then I'll come in behind you.
Oh, thanks, Larry. I was just going to ask Darcy if she had, Darcy or Ed, Emil's not here, if you have any input on this, I would appreciate hearing from you.
Yes, thank you, John. Yes, I did talk to John about this. As far as my concern, I would have, in the grading, I have caution about this coming in as an RDA, and as explained to Mr. Hurley, that grading this close to a top of, even if it's a state bank, I did look at this. I don't believe it's a town bank because we don't have a coastal wetland resource at the bottom. But for grading, I don't think this should come in as an RDA. I could understand removal of some trees for a safety issue, cutting some trees down maybe as an RDA, but not the grading. I think we should have a plan that details the grade changes and also, you know, properly staked for the property line. So I have concerns on this and let them know.
So your recommendation would be you'd be okay with approving removal of the trees, but not the grading that Mr. Hurley wants to do without filing an NOI. Is that what you're saying, Darcy?
Yes. And just remember, though, this is an RD. I did explain that, you know, he'd had a couple of options, either to withdraw it and take his check with him and come back, or come before the commission and hear what you have to say. That we can't change the plan because this is an RDA and you have to have it done in 21 days. So I'm just cautioning on that.
Right.
Okay, so you have to withdraw this if the commission so ruled and refile as an NOI is what you're suggesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks, Darcy.
If I can add, this is John Hurley, that I did spend the $3,500 to have my property staked prior to this. I don't know if you were able to see those markings,
Okay,
just to give everybody a better idea of where my property was.
Thank you for the clarification.
The problem, Mr. Hurley, is filing an NOI requires kind of an engineered stamp plan, and it would be more expensive than an RDA. But that's a decision you have to make.
Yeah, Darcy was crystal clear on that. But I was just going to see what the committee was, where you would come to a conclusion and then make that decision at that time. That's why I still wanted to be on the call.
Thank you.
So, John, when they come into the grading, we need to know what the existing grade is and then what the proposed grade is. And you should probably show, the engineer will probably show some of the spot grades to show us what is the intent of the grading. So it's a lot more information than what you submitted right now under the LDA. So, Larry?
Thank you, Tom. John, I'm going to go back to this again. First of all, I'm looking at this and I saw the stakes that you had there, and I turned around and actually walked along behind the trees a little bit and saw that the bank was a little further away from that line, or the imaginary line. So my question for you is that is there a way you could consider leveling the top of that off without grading it down a whole lot? Grading, I take it, would probably call for some sort of piece of equipment. Is there a way you could perhaps level the top off and still put the fence there without dropping it down as much as you think you might like to do? That way, you should be able to stay with an RDA and not have as much change conducted by the process. Is that something you could consider doing?
I could, yeah. I really didn't look at it that way because of taking the trees down and having the mound there. I think because of the mound is significant, I wasn't sure how I was going to be able to fence in the area to keep my kids from falling down the hill. So I wasn't really sure what the best situation was, and I never really gave that much thought, but I could, easily go that route. But this is the first time I really, thought about that.
Well, it would seem that the fencing could actually come a little closer to the house, and then you could maybe grade on the not on the back side, but on the side between where the fence was and the house, so you tapered it down more gently. That would really simplify it and minimize the expense for you, and just let it ride with the way you filed it. That if you could do it that way, I should think that would be acceptable.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I don't have any issues with that as long as I get the approval to take the trees down.
Okay.
And then I don't have any issues with not disturbing that side of the bank. Or I should say the mound, not the bank.
I just have concern that we have enough information on a revised plan, understanding about this decision we're making on the grading. So the plan that you have before you is what has to be voted on tonight. So I don't know. I'm a little confused on what you're coming up with, Larry, and how we would revise the plan to.
Right.
Well, I'm coming up that basically the plan doesn't show the grading information, probably because he may have been led to believe that he didn't have to show that at this point. But I offered to him the idea of removing the trees, and whether it's stump remover probably wouldn't be necessary. Just put the new fence in front of where those trees used to be, and minimize the grading. Maybe just with a bobcat or a gravely or something. Just he could probably come in and do that in a sketch. He could measure the distances. Come in and alter the sketch plan if you wanted him to do so. But right now he's conceding that he simply won't grade anything.
Larry, you can't I'm sorry, you can't revise this plan because it has to be, it would take a continuance for us to be able to look at the plan.
Which we can't grant.
Continue an RDA.
Well,
we cannot continue.
Following Larry's idea, though, would it be possible, Darcy, if Mr. Hurley just withdrew this and refiled a new plan? Would that be
that is an option. And I did explain to Mr. Hurley my concerns about, we don't have enough information on the grading on this, and that would be something that would be on an engineering plan. So yes, he could withdraw this and start over again with an RDA and bring it back.
Right, and then following Larry's idea, he could just put information on there relative to the approach Larry suggested to him, if that's acceptable.
Yep, and like a sketch of,
right,
a side view sketch of how we would be doing the simpler grading. Yes, that's a good option.
Would there be an additional filing fee for the second RDA?
Yes.
And how much is that usually? Just so he knows.
He knows what this one costs. I think it's the 125. I don't have my.
Which, Larry, as you know, would be a better option than having to file an NOI or getting a negative.
No, I agree. John, are you comfortable with that approach?
Oh, the filing fee.
So I don't have a problem with the filing fee. I think what I'm hearing, and just want to make sure we're clear, is you want me to withdraw this at this time, or ask for a continuance and add documents to it with the grading sketch.
Well, the problem with the continuance is the very strict limitation on time. So continuing it beyond the date, we have to do it in 21 days. You don't have time to do that. So it's better just to withdraw it today, and then take a week or two, whatever it's going to take you to refile it and pay the 125. And by that time, when it comes up again, it should go through quickly.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The permitted fee on the agenda is $25.52, and we cannot continue on this RDA thing. So you need to withdraw, and then you can refile it with the information that we need to do in terms of the tree removal. And if you want to put the fence down, install the fence and not do anything in terms of the grading. Minimize a lot of the grading stuff that you need to do. Otherwise, it'd be turned into an NOI.
And just specify that on his new filing.
Right. George?
Yes, I think Louise had her hand up first. Go ahead, Louise.
Yeah, and when you refile, would you please mark the trees that you're...
I knew you were going to say that, Louise, and that's why I had my hand up too.
Yeah, because there are a lot of trees there, and it's confusing. So.
Okay, I will withdraw, and I'll make sure that I please the recommendations.
Good luck, Mr. Hurley.
All right, thank you.
Any public comment on this?
It's withdrawn, Tom.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Please submit an email that you're withdrawing this, so we have it for the record, Mr. Hurley.
So the
I'll take care of it right
withdrawing these applications. The second item.
Thank you.
The second item on the RDA is Town of Barnstable improvement to Keys Beach parking lot, including new stormwater collection systems, replacement of existing pavement, and new stripping at 465 C Street, Hyannis, as shown on the assessors map 306, parcel 191. Tang from DPW.
Trudy Baker, is there
Yeah.
Tandy Baker? I'm sorry, I'm saying the name wrong.
Tony Baker. Yeah, you're mute. Unmute yourself. You're on the phone. Tony Baker from the DBW.
*6 on a phone should unmute.
Right.
There you go. She's unmuted. She.
He.
DPW is unmuted.
He's unmuted, but it's not. No sound. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh my God. Yes. Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I could not get on the Zoom meeting, but if you can hear me now, I was able to get on the phone.
Yep, we can hear you.
Yes, I'm here on behalf of the town of Barnstable. As the chair said, we're asking for an RDA for Keys Beach parking lot to improve that parking lot. The improvements will be a reclaim to the parking lot area, which we staked out. The reclaim will consist of adding 2 additional catch basins and a subsurface infiltration system. The additional structures will be to improve the existing drainage system on the parking lot.
Thank you. Any questions? Are you all set?
Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead, John.
Yes.
Oh, thank you, Tom. Part of the request is to repave the entire parking lot. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Based on our prior experience, we have found that especially with asphalt paving, that tends to leach oils and other bad stuff. How can you prevent that? Will these new catch basins prevent any of that potential leaching from the new pavement into the water?
Yes, it will.
Tom, is there your thoughts on this, Tom, with your experience?
No, there is something that you can add to the catch basins to minimize all this runoff to catch the oil.
Do you know what that is, Tom, that you can suggest?
I know.
Are you talking about a green trap?
Yeah.
Yes.
Then could we get an agreement that you would add whatever this is?
Yes. It should be shown in the typical. The catch basin typically comes with a green trap, but you can have an agreement on that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
You're welcome, sir.
In your catchment in the basin, there's not a detail in terms of that. At least I didn't see it. So you should add that in there to catch the oil.
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
The only question I have for you though is, I think during the construction, you might want to check the groundwater level in terms of, how high are they? Because right now your input on the leaching setup is about 1.9, and I'm not sure what is the seasonal high groundwater in the area is. So you should check that.
Yeah, I think I saw your questions earlier. We did not collect any test pit data, but the designer assumed that the groundwater table is at sea level. Okay, which is why we chose the low profile leaching galleys, but we can check that too.
No, I understand that, but what I'm saying is that you should check the groundwater level when you're doing the construction. Make sure that is that low. Or that's what I'm saying.
Okay. I'm just not hearing you clearly. I think it's because I'm on this phone. I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah. You said check the groundwater level.
Yeah, because
Okay.
you need to know how high is the groundwater level, and typically when we are designing the stormwater leaching system, usually is at least 2 feet above the groundwater table.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Larry?
Thank you. Did you pronounce your first name Tunde?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I'm looking at your very good drawing, and as you drive into the access to this parking lot straight ahead, there's a wooden walk that goes up the slope. Are you going to be cutting back into that slope at all for additional parking spaces?
Which drawing are you looking at? C1?
C1. C1.
Okay. Can you hold on a second?
Sure.
Please.
Well, actually, C2 might be better because C2, I think, is
right.
Yeah, C2 is the one. Yeah, are you going to be cutting into the bank there at all for those parking spaces?
I'm not quite sure where you're talking about on.
Okay, if you drive into the area off of C Street,
Ocean Ave.
Ocean Ave. If you drive in there and go straight ahead, off to the right, closer to the water in an easterly direction, there's some additional parking spaces there. At least they look additional. So I don't know whether you're going to have to cut into the bank or whether they're just going to go on the surface as it exists.
No, they're going to go on the existing surface. We're not cutting into the bank.
Okay, that's all I was checking for. That's fine.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate John's question about, the possible topics or whatnot that might reach off of the parking lot. And we didn't really know, what is this thing called? And I wanted just for clarification for the rest of us that are ignorant, you're saying grease or green trap?
No, green traps are what you use in catch basins.
Okay,
grease traps are basically more restaurant.
Okay, so
kind of areas. Yeah.
So it's a green trap, and a green trap something that is periodically serviced, maintained, or whatever.
Right.
It is. You empty.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry. I said right. I'm just having a bad connection. I'm sorry to the whole commission.
Okay, so it's a green trap that gets periodically maintained. Thank you.
And if we need any more, Bill, we'll get it from Tom. He'll educate us all.
All right. I want to know about stuff.
Okay.
Excuse me, Tom?
Yeah.
I had sent an email to Griffin also and Joe and Tunde that we should have a stamped engineering plan on this. So at the same time, when they send the one with the stamp, we should have the details of it, including the green trap into the drainage system.
Okay, I'll make sure. Okay, definitely.
So when you supplying the revised plan, you should include in that engineering stamp and then the detail of the green trap plus a note saying that you are checking the groundwater elevations at the location where you have your leaching basins.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We're going to approve, well, the commission has the option of giving a negative determination based on this plan, so we can move this forward with it being a negative determination, which we have to act on tonight. But it would have a condition that the rest of the revised plan and the clarification on the groundwater that Tom is asking for and the signed stamped plan come in before work starts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Channel 18, any public comment on this?
Can I just ask a question? Can we put a condition like that on an RDA?
Yes, there's a line that we can put that on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Larry, your hands is up.
Darcy, you just said that he's going to submit a revised plan, but can he get that in before the 21 days? Is that a requirement that he get it in by that time?
This, if it's something that the commission can do a simple request as far as having the plan signed and having the green trap put on the information sheet on the actual details of the catch basin. That's something that we can approve this tonight based on this plan, and it can come in before work starts. It's different than having them redesign or move something on the plan. So yes, I am comfortable that we can go forward with this, and it just be the stamp plan with a revision date be submitted before work starts.
Well, to me, it seems inconsistent with how we handled the one that preceded. That's all I'm looking at. That's where I am.
I think that there's a difference, Larry, perhaps because your point's a valid one, in terms of a procedural or almost a graphic change versus a substantive change. Maybe that would be the explanation for the difference.
Yes, thank you.
Channel 18, end the public comment on this.
Seeing none.
Could I have a motion to approve this project as a negative determinations, but subject to the receipt of a revised plan before the construction with the engineering stamp, the detail on the green
Green trap.
Green trap.
Green trap.
Then a note of the checking on the groundwater elevations during construction.
Louise made the motion. Second.
Roll call.
Abadili.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Moran.
Aye.
That is unanimous.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you. Can I ask you a question, please? Are you giving us 21 days to get that in, or is that what you're saying, just to be clear?
No, we approve this, but just wait, get your revised plan in before your construction start.
Oh, before construction. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you very much.
There's no 21-day limit.
Okay, so it's just get it in before we start any construction.
Correct.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission.
Thank you. We have
good
one NOI tonight. Robert C. Howard, trustee, 129 Salt Point Roads Realty Trust. Repair an existing stone revetment that was allowed under the emergency repair order at 129 Salt Point Road, Barnstable, as on an assessors map 280 parcel 022. Rob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Bob Perry here, and I think I'm coming through. Would you confirm that for me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you so much. So back in the summer of 2022, the commission approved an emergency authorization. There was a site meeting. Dale Briggs was there and the owners were there. And there was, I think, every intention of getting this work done within that time frame. But little did we know that there would be a delay. So it's, I think, regrettable that not everybody involved understood the schedule, but the work was done in November. And I was informed of that at about the time that it was going forward. So I was able to make inspections. There was follow-up difficulty in getting signatures from the owner, and we finally got that and filed a notice of intent to make good on the requirement that a notice of intent be the vehicle to review the work, even if it's completed. So you have a notice of intent for work that is already completed. There really was a very good execution of the job. A last-minute change that was authorized through the staff was that instead of putting a bunch of rock at the top, the owner preferred sand, and that didn't seem to be objectionable, so that it's really a sacrificial dose of sand that could be washed away someday, but that was their preference. So a 20-foot, no longer, but approximately 15 to 20-foot length of the upper portion of the revetment was reassembled, and you can see it in the two photographs, so that it's kind of a smooth textured revetment, but the repair was made consistent with that. It's very neat. It's very stable. Can't say how long any of it's going to last because it's a very, very old revetment, but I think the repair was well done, and the access, you would not know that anyone went through there to do this work. So all ended well, although it got a late start. And I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you, Bob. At the time, George, myself, and Darcy went out to the site and take a look. And then we saw in the first photograph, when you look at the figure 1 pre-work conditions, there's a big hole underneath the stone revetment there. And this becomes a safety issues to the homeowner. That's why we issued the emergency order for the repair. So, any questions from the commissioner? None. Channel 18, any public comment on this?
Seeing none.
Could I have a motion to approve this project as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Warren,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Hearn,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Abadili,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. That's unanimous.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you all. Good night.
Good night. We have one amended orders, Cape Cod Property Trust, amended order to update invasive species management protocol at 1025 Old Post Road, Barnstable, as shown on the Assessors Map 074, parcel 003-003. Lauren?
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Hi. My name is Lauren Cronin. I'm with Gregory Lombardi Design. We're the landscape architect on the project. And the amended order is to add the Wilkinson Ecological has been brought on to be the company who's going to do the invasive species removal and the installation of the mitigation plantings that were approved under the original order. And so as part of that, they've submitted the protocol they would like to use to remove and manage the invasive species. So that is what is included in the package as the additional piece of information.
Can you show the plan?
Yes, I think I can. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Okay, great. So this is the plan we submitted. Nothing has changed except for this delineation, this dotted line of where the invasive management protocol is going to happen. All the mitigation planting is the same as was previously approved. And then the protocol itself, I can zoom in on that if that's helpful.
We all have that too.
Okay.
Right. Are you all set? Are you all set with your presentation?
Oh, yes. If you, yeah, I'm happy to answer questions.
Darcy, do you have any comment on that invasive planting removal?
No, it looks fine. We would want to have a special condition, and it's done by licensed applicator, and that we're going to be adding an ongoing condition because they are asking ongoing invasive plant management. Is that true, Lauren? You want this longer than the 3 years? Do you want an ongoing condition for the invasive treatment? Because that's something that the commission would be.
I think it would be good to have just in case there's any recurrence of anything so that it can be managed.
So I am good with that, Tom. And
okay.
And I think you did have the three-year monitoring reports. I mean, annual monitoring reports for 3 years.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, in the project description, it refers to mechanical removal as a possible means. I just wondered what is meant by mechanically removed.
Hi there, Matt Lottenberger from Wilkinson here. Sorry, I don't have a camera. Mechanical removal is just referencing when you're physically cutting and then removing a plant rather than specifically there's no heavy machinery that'll be used, if that's what you're asking.
That is what I'm asking. Thank you.
Yep. Any other question from the commissioner? None. Channel 18, any public comment on this?
Seeing none.
None. Let me try this, and then if I miss anything, Darcy, remind me. Could I have a motion to approve this project as the amended order, but subject to, if you need to apply the herbicide and so forth, you need the licensed applicator. And we will require an annual report for 3 years and allowing the maintenance for invasive species ongoing as ongoing conditions. Did I miss anything, Darcy?
No, you got it. Thank you.
Okay.
So moved.
Second. Roll call.
Abadili.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Moran.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
We have two sets of minutes. We have two sets of minutes, April the 4th and April the 11th.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept the minutes as submitted.
Second.
Roll call.
Moran.
Aye.
Abadili.
Abstain.
Foster.
Yes.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Our next hearing is a remote hearing at 6:30 on May the 9th, 2023. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Abadili.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Moran.
Aye.
That's unanimous. We are adjourned at 5:51.